Hey, it's 4:20, it's Friday, and it's time for the bell. Today we're going to have a look at the impact of marijuana or cannabis on different cultures within the world, just to have a look and see just how far back it goes, how far around the world it's stretched.
You are watching 420 Central TV, Fridays at 4:20, hosted by Rory Taylor. On this week's episode, we are talking the impact of marijuana on the different cultures of the world. We have Green News, event coverage. Stay tuned and keep involved by liking and sharing and subscribing on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to join the conversation by hitting us up on Facebook and on Instagram.
Have you ever considered how many people or how people perceive weed in the various corners of the world? It turns out that the buzz-giving herb has more intriguing uses than we know the modern culture of cannabis to be. The current trend is to use marijuana for health and recreation. Some cannabis lovers even cultivate weed from high THC clones or seeds and other popular strains at home in their own grow rooms. Also grown on the street in country tiny houses, as we probably look at indoor grows or tents in South Africa. Marijuana forms part of various religious and spiritual practices in some of the countries. If you delve a bit deeper, the history of weed is profound. In previous eras, people turned to the plant for medicine, textiles, paper, and even the construction of weapons, and that's quite an interesting one. So, are you ready to uncover the cultural side of cannabis? Let's go. Most people know marijuana as a recreational herb that induces euphoria, relaxation, and many enjoy it in tinctures or edible candies like gummies. And talking about that, that's sort of an example of what you'd find on the market today: cannabis in candies and or in tinctures. And tinctures are the oils that you find and or those that are used orally. Mexico. Well-known land races like Acapulco gold originate from Mexico, giving the country a rich history in the region. When the Spanish arrived, they brought further crops to produce textiles. The locals have seasoned cultivators of the psychoactive plants or other psychoactive plants like fungi, or known as mushrooms, and peyote. People in the country use it to treat various health conditions, especially pain. Now that's one that comes up regularly in terms of the use of cannabis. Pain's a big one that the CBD oils have managed to help countless people relieve their pain, whether it's been around past injuries or people that are suffering the aftermath of having chemotherapy. There's a whole lot of uses, and pain seems to be one of the best uses for CBD. Let's cut across to Jamaica. The association between Jamaica and cannabis is common knowledge, but this relationship transcends the simple stoner culture. The herb's been an integral part of the Rastafarian faith. Followers believe that the marijuana helps them ascend spiritually while keeping the mind at peace. Locals typically smoke it during meditative prayers and feel that it helps them connect with their creator at a deeper level. I think that whole kind of using cannabis and revealing oneself to oneself is one of the important uses of cannabis. The Jamaicans also use cannabis to make ganja tea, which they claim has various health benefits. They report that it assists with hypertension, stress, nausea, and headaches. Many questions about medical marijuana are still unanswered, but the evidence is in the result for some cultures. Cutting across the globe and heading to China. China's a fascinating history surrounding cannabis and hemp. Some relevant artifacts date back thousands of years. Weed culture here displays more productive uses though. There are hemp fibers present in ancient burial chambers in China, as well as hemp rope imprints on the pottery of early age. Some historians claim that marijuana originated in this region and then spread to the rest of the globe over time. Ancient archers in China used hemp in their weapons. There's the weapon story, as the material was superior to bamboo, not something I was aware of. This strength was beneficial for making bowstrings that flung arrows further than their enemies could shoot, so allowing you to be able to have a distance from your enemy, and that gave you a huge advantage. There's also evidence that suggests locals used hemp for paper making. The health uses of weed also date back to the ancient Chinese era. Even though their application differed from the modern methods, locals used it for ailments like menstrual cramps and gout, and in later years surgeons even used it as a form of anesthesia. And I guess that depends on just how much you induce or how much you smoke, that you'll certainly get to an anesthetic space. Going across to India, a country of stunning sights, sounds and spirituality, has several cannabis-related customs. The region is also home to a number of landrace strains. The country's initial use of the herb is estimated to be around 2000 BC. Almost all parts of the cannabis plant serve a purpose in India, not just the buds. Locals also use the resin, the seeds and the leaves. Marijuana uses, some enjoy a recreational toke and make a mildly intoxicating drink called balm. Others have more intense purpose for the herb. In tantric or Ayurveda practices, not quite sure of the pronunciation of that. Heading across to Africa. Africa is also home to a number of landrace strains in the sub-Saharan region. Indigenous tribes like the Khoikhoi chewed on the plant leaves to extract their reported benefits. In the northern parts of the continent, locals made rope from hemp and turned to cannabis for medical ritualistic practices. Some claim that certain tribes had special ceremonies where they enjoyed marijuana as part of the celebration. We have our own ceremonies and enjoyed marijuana as part of the celebration. Weed around the world. The culture of cannabis is widespread. The various societies include the herb in their traditional practices. Marijuana and hemp are versatile, and ancient civilization maximized these crops in textiles, rope, and in medicine. Even though most people currently use weed for recreational therapeutic purposes, the plant is still part of the religious and cultural practice in some places. Why not dig deeper and discover even more about how other civilizations utilize this incredible herb? What we'll do now is just cut to a little video and give you an idea of some of the places around the world where cannabis is being used. See you on the other side.
Cannabis in Greek, marijuana in Mexican, ganja in Hindi or bhanga in Sanskrit is known to many cultures around the world. But where was it first cultivated explicitly as a drug? In this video I shall demonstrate how the ancient Indo-Europeans were instrumental in spreading this narcotic across Eurasia and how they used it in a ritual associated with the dead. And you will learn how the Scythians spread the plant to the Assyrians and the Jews, and that even the Vikings used it. Please be aware that cannabis use is linked to impaired attention and memory, and increased risk of psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia. Just because it was used historically in ritual contexts, that doesn't mean I'm endorsing its recreational use today. Cannabis is actually one of the first ever domesticated plants. The tough fibers of the hemp plant make strong fabrics, so the plant has often been spread not so it can be smoked, but so it can be worked into rope and other strong fabrics, which makes identifying the origins of its use specifically as a drug harder to pin down. Wild cannabis grows across many of the cooler mountain foothills from the Caucasus to western China, so we ought reasonably to presume the earliest use as a drug took place somewhere within or close to its native habitat. From the late Stone Age through the Bronze Age and up into the Iron Age, this region, known as the steppe, was inhabited by various Indo-European peoples, many of whom are known to have used cannabis in their rituals. But in 2021, genetic evidence of the original domestication of the cannabis plant was published in a Swiss-Chinese paper by Ren and colleagues, and it indicates that rather than cannabis being originally domesticated on the steppes, it was actually first domesticated in East Asia, likely in early Neolithic China some 12,000 years ago. The authors propose that cannabis was originally a multi-purpose crop until around 4,000 years ago, when it diversified into two specialized domestic strains, one becoming hemp, cultivated for strong fibers, and which produces higher concentrations of CBD, and the other cultivated for drug use and containing high levels of tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, and overall higher levels of psychoactive cannabinoids. 4,000 years ago was also a time when northwestern China was inhabited by Indo-European peoples from the steppes, and they, no doubt, are the ones who spread the plant westward.
So as you can see, it's been around, I mean that quote there, some 12,000 years, that's just mind-boggling. But it's been around the world for a long time, it's travelled across the globe, whether it's been a rope or whether it's been a joint, it's certainly been part of the fabric of all societies almost for as long as time. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. We're going to cut to the news for you now, so enjoy the news and I'll see you on the other side.
Now, Germany is expected to become the biggest cannabis market in the world over the next 2 years. Plans to legalise the drug are pressing forward, despite concerns over the health impact. Ministers say the law will put safety first, though. When it's passed, it'll create opportunities for businesses, potentially worth billions.
A fledgling business is going mainstream.
For a long time, the belief was that banning cannabis would stop consumption.
Now the belief is there's legitimate money and jobs in it. But how easy is it to set up a cannabis company like Demikan near Dresden? These three mates from uni quit their jobs and bet everything they had on growing the perfect strain of Lady Jane for medical use.
From taking a new cutting to harvest is about 100 days, but within then the first 20 days the plant basically doubles in size every 3 to 4 days. Because we have an HVAC system that can control humidity and temperature so well, we can grow the plants to this size without mold. Yeah. If you were to have this kind of a flower that is so huge, and they will grow even larger than that, they would mold in a greenhouse.
As you can see, these guys have a massive head start on the recreational market once the laws change.
We invested probably around 20 million euros. Investing in security was one element, and investing in high tech and in this, pharmaceutical environment, that was just quite costly.
They're not profitable just yet, but there's an estimated €4 billion market waiting for them in Germany alone. Patrick wants to make use of his pharmaceutical platform to supply weed from abroad to regular consumers too. He says creating his own strain was...
I think it would be best if I would tell you it was super difficult, which it was. A time frame of 12 to 18 months and a cost factor between €500,000 and €9 million.
You could always grow your own. The government may allow 3 or 4 plants per household.
I'm confident that Germany will see a flourishing cannabis sector.
And the black market?
It'll dry up in the medium term. At least that's what we're hoping for.
Cannabis could even bring calm to the planet.
So Germany, looking at it's got itself a really big head start, as you heard in the beginning of that video. Just unbelievable to hear some of the figures being mentioned in euros, in millions. And when you extrapolate or do the exchange rate, that's frightening to think of the amount of money to set up a big facility like that. Again, of interest for me was the allowance that they're looking at for 3 to 4 plants for home use, which I think is an important one for any society to be allowed home growing to be done. And that just about wraps it up for this week. We're going to be dropping a couple of shows during the week or during the next coming weeks. What we'll do is feature some of the historical famous people that made use of cannabis or featured during cannabis in their lifespan. And those will be dropping independently, so look out for those. Have yourself a super week. We look forward to catching up with you next week. Make sure you got yourself a nice amount of cannabis to see you through the weekend. Have a relaxed weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next weekend. Ciao for now.